Two directors constantly butting heads over a direct-to-video movie, and somehow it still managed to be more faithful to the original source material than the first Howling movie. At least, according to the author. I guess people had decided they'd had enough of the more humorous installments to the franchise and wanted a return to the more serious and scary. Scary might be stretching it a little bit. The movie opens by introducing us to our main character, Marie, played by the late Romy Walthall, whom I'm getting very heavy Kimberly J. Brown vibes from. Anyone else? Yeah, I have that same level of uneasiness when in close proximity to a nun too, just for a different reason.
God damn it.
I blame the nun. I think she was using the Force to give Marie a mild inconvenience. We also meet Tom, played by the late Antony Hamilton, who seems to have swallowed his mic.
You know, it's not really your books I love. It's the fact that you're the only client who's always on time.
Their lunch discussion is rudely interrupted by a demonic fire entity. Or I guess it was just a hallucination, because it's not even 4 minutes into this movie and our protagonist is already in a ward. The doctor tells Marie's husband Richard, played by Michael T. Weiss, that this is the result of an overstimulated imagination. So your classic response that many ladies are accustomed to in the medical field. In order to ease these hallucinations, Tom drives Marie to a town called Drago, where Richard has found a cabin. Naturally, they get lost at a fork in the road. You know, cause they're city folk. Thankfully, Sheriff Stereotype, played by Norman Anstey, shows up to point them in the right direction. Upon arriving at the totally not suspicious cabin, Richard is there waiting to greet Marie, but not Tom.
Hey, why don't you just stay here tonight? I mean, it looks like we have plenty of room.
Look, Marie, he's got to get back. Tom's got to get back, right?
The next day, Richard and Marie explore the town of Drago, where they meet Eleanor, played by Lamia Derville, who's not exceptionally subtle about her flirting. They also meet Mr. and Mrs. Ormsted, played by the late Dennis Smith and Kate Edwards, who run the grocery shop. Despite this quaint little area, it seems that Marie is having nightmares. On top of that, Pierre, Marie's dog, has gone missing. When she approaches the sheriff with this issue, he tells her there's nothing to worry about, as there are no big predatory animals around here. Marie doesn't buy this, as she's been hearing howling the last few nights. Once Tuesday rolls around, it's time for Richard to leave for work. This leaves Marie to talk to Mrs. Ormsted, until she needs to head back to the cabin. Along the way, she mistakes Eleanor for the mysterious nun she's been seeing. She also finds Pierre's head before she's chased away by something. Unfortunately, due to her previous freakout, Richard isn't inclined to believe there was actually anything after her. The following day, after a brief vision of an elderly couple warning against staying in the cabin, Marie is visited by Janice, played by Susanne Severeid. Apparently, she's a big fan of hers, and just had to go full stalker by showing up at Marie's cabin unannounced. Just like the ghost couple, Marie handles this very poorly, by inviting Janice inside. Maybe it's a good thing. It gives Marie a chance to talk about the odd shit around here, with someone who isn't a local. Through doing so, she learns that Janice used to be a nun, and her friend, Sister Ruth, had gone missing, only to be found in Drago on the verge of insanity. A month after she died, Janice left the convent, in search of what happened to Ruth.
Janice, do you mind if I helped you find out what happened?
This can only go well. Richard returns with painting supplies and a gift for Marie, from Eleanor's store. Oh, and one more thing.
I found this.
Ew, that's even worse than a poodle head. Yeah, so Richard assumes that Marie saw this thing and thought it was Pierre. Alright, fine, whatever. I guess Pierre isn't that big of a concern. While Marie is channeling her inner Rembrandt, she meets John and Paula, played by Greg Latter and Maxine John.
You guys aren't from around here, are ya?
No, New York. Driving and hiking through California.
Aside from the distinct lack of hiking locations in the Big Apple, what exactly led them to come here?
Came to see the bell tower in Drago. Evidently the bell was rung to summons the townspeople. And when they were all inside, the tower was burned down. Apparently there were no survivors.
I'm sure this is immensely comforting to Marie. Well, say goodbye to John and Paula. No, seriously, say goodbye. Isn't that a bitch? Your husband wants to get freaky and a nun shows up. Speaking of, Richard leaves for work again, so Marie and Janice go to town to investigate this bell tower. Or try to. They are distracted for a moment by a camper. Specifically, the camper that belongs to John and Paula that the sheriff claims was abandoned. Once again, Marie isn't inclined to believe this, so she does some investigating in the garage. She finds John and Paula's license plates, which proves her theory of foul play. What's more is that Dr. Coon Coombs, played by the late Dennis Fallbeg, confirms that the couple didn't come to him, as Marie had instructed Paula. The good doctor doesn't provide many answers on Sister Ruth, though. So Marie and Janice pay Father Camfron, played by Anthony James, a visit. He explains more about Ruth's state when she had been found. One thing she repeated was, "We're all in fear." "It's a haunted ficus, run for your lives!" Actually, it's another, according to Richard, bad dream. His wife is dealing with what may or may not be supernatural forces, and is frequently on the verge of a mental breakdown. So what does Richard do? He meets up with Eleanor and cheats on Marie. Janice comes by again, this time with more information on the bell tower. Apparently, it originally came from a town called Draga. You know, in Transylvania. Don't do this to me, man. Not again. Villagers were killed due to the belief of werewolves. On that note, Marie shot at a wolf last night. When her request for Tom to investigate the license plates she found comes up with nothing, Marie decides to let Richard in on everything she and Janice had been doing. This goes about as well as you would expect. Upon leaving the cabin for a walk and meeting Eleanor there, she proceeds to turn into a werewolf and bite the shit out of his shoulder. This was just another excuse to get Richard to take his shirt off again, wasn't it?
But his shoulder. The bite marks.
Bite marks? There weren't any bite marks. Just a few scratches.
Marie's just gaslit some more by the doctor and Richard about this latest incident, and she's actually starting to believe them. When Tom shows up upon Marie's request, Richard takes offense. So Tom goes to Janice and they start piecing things together, like the license plates. Those belonged to Sister Ruth, or technically her father, who is living in the cabin that Marie and Richard are staying at. While Tom heads to warn Marie and Richard, Janice figures out that what Sister Ruth had been muttering was "werewolves are here." What in the Toxic Avenger is going on here? I guess this is the transformation scene. I'm just not sure if I should blame Hough or Turner for this. Marie certainly ain't sticking around to find out. Ooh, it's like one of those hairless dogs. At least Janice comes to her aid. That seems a little excessive.
What is that? What the fuck is that?
They figured that if they replicate what was done in Transylvania, that is how they defeat the werewolves. Or what appears to be German shepherds. And with that, the credits roll. Well, that was boring. The song Something Evil, Something Dangerous by Justin Hayward I actually liked. If nothing else, the last few Howling sequels have provided at least one good song. For the most part, the effects aren't bad at all. I'm both baffled and kind of impressed that the choice was made to have Richard transform by melting, and the full-fledged werewolf we see in the climax looks pretty decent. It's extraordinarily obvious that they filmed this movie the Italian way, and by that I mean they didn't record audio at the same time. And that's not such a terrible thing, but why the hell does there have to be so much clear breathing directly into the mic going on? When it comes to werewolf films, what we want above everything else is to see the werewolf, right? Granting a few exceptions, of course. But here, the werewolves don't appear until the last 20 minutes or so. When we see other fully transformed werewolves, they're literally just dogs. We've seen this before, people. This is such a slow plot. Hardly anything interesting happens during the entire duration. I feel like we're meant to see this as more of a mystery type of story, but it's extremely dry. The acting isn't good. It's what I would call wooden and severely lackluster. You can very easily tell that the two directors resented each other, especially with Turner doing a lot of the editing behind Hugh's back. It's been mentioned before that the editing isn't doing the film any favors either. With all that being said, I'm giving Howling IV, the original Nightmare, 3 out of 10 bloody thumbs up. While this may be the more faithful adaptation to Bradner's novel, it's not as compelling or entertaining as Dante's version. It feels like it was made by Hallmark. It's not good when a werewolf film makes its viewers forget that werewolves are involved. It's simply too fragmented and dull to be entertaining, even as a so bad it's good film. I can't imagine myself saying, hey, I want to watch a werewolf movie. Let me pop in Howling IV. I would recommend Howling IV to the dedicated werewolf fans out there, those who like their horror slow and dry, forgotten horror film enthusiasts, and anyone who wants to see what the end result of two directors who hate each other is. See you later. If you're looking for more Howling, check out my reviews of the rest of the franchise. Thank you to my patrons Michael Museo, Bronson Wright Wolf, Dianamo, Sean Sheridan, Raiders AK, and Angel X Minx 88 for supporting the channel.